All right, today we are stepping inside one of the most innovative and, honestly, important memoirs of our time, Carmen Maria Machado's In the Dream House. This is a book that doesn't just tell a story, it has to build one, piece by piece, from the rubble of memory. So let's explore how she tackles that fundamental challenge.
And that really is the question at the heart of this book. Machado is trying to tell a story about domestic abuse inside a queer relationship, a story that for so long has been basically invisible. It doesn't have a common language, there's no archive you can just go look up. So how in the world do you give shape to an experience that society has pretty much pretended doesn't exist?
So everything really starts with the house itself, and Machado is so insistent on this from the get-go. This is not just some clever metaphor. No, the dream house was a real, physical place. It was the container for her relationship, for the love, and then eventually for the terror. By making us believe in its reality, she's really setting the stage for how this physical place becomes something so much more.
So let's get into our first big idea here and explore how Machado pulls off this incredible transformation, turning a physical space into a psychological landscape. She literally uses the architecture of the house, its rooms, its walls, all its hidden corners, as a kind of blueprint for a mind that's under siege.
From a literary standpoint, what she does here is just brilliant. She taps right into the traditions of Gothic literature. You know the drill. The beautiful, romantic house that slowly reveals a sinister side. It starts as a dream and morphs into a prison. And that perfectly, chillingly, mirrors the path of an abusive relationship.
This quote just gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? The home is supposed to be your sanctuary, right? The one place you're safe. But Machado shows us what happens when that sanctuary becomes the source of the fear itself. The monster isn't some stranger outside. The horror is living inside with you. And using these horror tropes, it's how she makes that internal struggle feel real and external.
And this idea, it just keeps growing. The entire house becomes this living, breathing archive of her trauma. It's not just a backdrop, it's practically a character in the story. Those spiders in the basement, they're not just spiders, they're the physical shape of dread. By projecting her internal state onto the house, she makes the invisible wounds of psychological abuse totally tangible.
But here's the thing. The archive she's building is not just for her. It becomes this profound political act. And that brings us to our next section, the politics of the archive, and this incredible fight to pull queer stories out of a history of silence.
This is such a powerful concept that Machado uses to explain why it's so hard to find stories like hers. Archival silence isn't just a simple mistake or an empty space. It's the result of choices, conscious or not, that decides some people's experiences just don't matter enough to be saved. It's a kind of violence in itself.
And this quote from the theorist José Esteban Muñoz just nails the problem. Official history demands hard physical proof, but so much of queer history is built on what he calls ephemera, feelings, glances, rumors, little traces left behind. So when the people in charge of the official records, the gatekeepers, don't even recognize your life as valid, the evidence of your pain just disappears.
So what you're seeing here is a tale of two archives, right? On one side, you've got the official, selective, gate-kept version of history, and on the other, you have what Machado is building. This memoir is her archive. She becomes her own archivist, and in doing so, she argues that private feelings are evidence, just as powerful as any official document.
Okay, so this brings us to what is, for me, the most mind-blowing part of this book, its actual structure. Because Machado knows that no single, straightforward story could ever capture the sheer complexity of what she went through.
Well, her solution is pretty radical. Since there's no established language, no archive for the specific kind of trauma, she decides to create her own. She builds a taxonomy of pain. She takes her story and shines it through the lens of dozens and dozens of genres, tropes, and folktales, trying to find a language for the unnameable. I mean, just look at this list for a second. The book has over 100 short chapters, and each one is titled Dream House as something new. One minute it's a dark, gritty noir film, the next it's a bizarrely funny stoner comedy. And trust me, this is not a gimmick. It's a structural choice that perfectly mirrors the confusing, fragmented, and disorienting reality of living with trauma.
And the chapter called Dream House's Word Problem? Wow. It's a perfect, almost painful example of how this works. It takes all the messy, impossible emotions of the situation and filters them through the cold, hard logic of a math problem. The result is just absolutely chilling. It shows how trauma forces you to make these impossible calculations just to survive another day.
So when you put it all together, this whole structure, this taxonomy, it's like she's running diagnostics on her own trauma. By trying on all these different genres, she's able to dissect and categorize something that feels unspeakable. She's giving it shape and form, using the language of stories themselves. So, after all of this, why does it matter? What's the big takeaway from this wild, radical memoir? What's the point of building a house like this?
By completely ditching a traditional linear story, she basically hands a blueprint to anyone else whose experience has been silenced or dismissed. She provides a language, a structure, a way in. She's not just telling her story, she's showing all of us how to tell the stories that don't have a conventional shape.
And that really leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on, doesn't it? The book forces you to look at your own life and think about the stories you tell, the ones you hide, and the gaps, the archival silences in your own personal history. What parts of your own story have been told they weren't worth keeping?
And then there's the dedication. Just these simple, powerful words. It's such a generous act. She takes her own deeply personal archive and turns it into a public resource, a kind of sanctuary for any reader who's ever felt like their story was impossible to tell. She builds the house, and then she leaves the front door wide open.